Hey, everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back for the 147th Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. It is August, August 14th today, 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern. It's great to have everybody with us. We're starting with 28 great folks, and we will move on up. TATANKA BRICCA, Wendi Lederman, Steve Caruso, Mike Hirsch, our usual crew. We see Kathy Wolf from New Hampshire. How you doing, Kathy? Oh, you're in Maine. But anyway, how you doing? Somebody, Lynn Sturm is at the beach with me. The great Joel Siegel from North Carolina. Charlotte is with us. And also, Dorothy mentioned Susie Shannon, your cohort. Joel, you should come on out to California for Dorothy's upcoming fundraiser with, among others, Jane Fonda, which will give you the detail. We have a huge agenda today. It's many, many things to cover. We will not meet next week, but we will meet the week after. This being August, we're going every other week. So 2 weeks from today will be the August 28th, and we will meet again, but next week, August 21st, we will not. And when I next see you, I will have a new right knee, and I will be an inch taller than I am now. So at any rate, it's one. Dennis Bernstein is with us, the great Dennis from KPFA, the Flashpoint show. Dennis, wonderful to see you. MYLA RESON, and so many others. So we have some great news, but we're going to have to start with some terrible news. And we have our wonderful friend John Steiner with us to talk about Maui. In the second hour, we're going to deal with nuclear issues and sustainability, and also a huge victory, court victory, which I'll talk about in a second. But unfortunately, well, we're going to go also, we have a victory in Ohio that we're going to talk about, a very big one. But unfortunately, we have to start with the situation in Maui. I lived in Maui for 6 months. You know, it's like Mother Nature telling us there are no safe places on this earth. If there was a safe, secure place where you could count on things being wonderful, it was Maui. You know, Lahaina, you could settle into Lahaina and never go anywhere else. It was just paradise. It was as close to paradise as any place on this earth. And all of a sudden, we have the worst wildfire, the most deadly wildfire, and they're way not done with finding people dead, unfortunately. So 96 is the toll now. I mean, I can't even begin to comprehend. I spent many wonderful hours in Lahaina, and you know, when you're in Lahaina, you never wanted to be anywhere else. It was just, you know, why go anywhere else? And now, all of a sudden, it's gone. John Steiner, you have worked with Ram Dass, and he had a center there. Do you want to tell us how people can help with the Maui situation? John Steiner, are you with us? Yes. Are you unmuted? There you are.
I don't know what to do. I'm on.
Here you are. You're on.
All right. So Harvey, thank you. My wife, Margo King, is here as well. We've had the privilege of being in Maui for a number of times over the years, and everybody's been reading what the tragedy is. Just occurred to me that what we might want to do, because so many people have been to Maui or have relatives there. We keep hearing people who have honeymooned there. If everybody would go into reactions and just put a heart on the screen, if you've either been to Maui or really feel connected to Maui. I think there's just a sense of how many of us just feel that's a second home, part of who we are. We know the spirit there. And I'm not going to go into the tragedy side of this because I think we've read all about it. The Washington Post a few days did a good piece on all the places that we can give to. The one group that we're highlighting today that's part of the Ram Dass community are two wonderful women Maui elders who run an organization called ALOHA in Action. We won't even put it in the chat. You can find it online. They are on the ground. They're working with people. They know what's going on. Their work is very up close and personal. And I think what we'd like to do, just again, we'll make it brief, is just to tell two stories that have really touched us. Dear friends of ours, go ahead, about Sharon B. and what was on the Facebook page.
Oh, yeah, that's so dear. We had some wonderful friends who lost their house in a big, beautiful condo complex right over the ocean, 350 units. A third of it burned down, including their house, while they were away camping in the Rockies. And Cher, the first thing she posted, we're fine, our house is lost, but the most important thing is I want to know how to help. I know a lot about restoration. Can somebody start to plug me in? We're coming home. And there's just so much like that. The spirit of Aloha is alive and overwhelmed. It's just a flood of love when we talk to our friends over there. They're just so grateful for all the prayers, and money is, of course, what they need a lot of. But over to you.
Just one more story we happened to read on an Oprah Winfrey post. Oprah has quite the spread over there. And she's been going into the shelters, and she tells the story of talking to people in shelters and asking them, what do you need? And she was in a shelter, and she sees a man sitting down with bandages around his legs. And she says, what do you need? And he said, well, I jumped out of my car. I ran to safety. I ran through the flames. I could feel the heat popping my flesh. What do I need? I don't need anything. I'm just glad to be alive.
And he's trying to get well so he can go help. Harvey, one thing I would say is I've been reading an amazing book.
We don't have time for that.
I just want to put the title,
Okay.
Breaking Together by Jem Bandel. The subtitle is A Freedom-Loving Response to Collapse. Industrial civilization is collapsing, and this is a brilliant book. You go on his website, JEMBENDELL, and Maui is just one very extreme, but it'll get more extreme example of it.
Just as you said early, that's really all we have to offer at the moment, y'all.
Well, again, the last place on earth, literally, that you would ever think of a tragedy like this was Maui. And, I don't know how many people, if anybody else wants to chime in with a remembrance. I mean, I spent days in the crater, the Haleakala crater, back when you didn't need a permit in the 70s. I would wander into this crater 10,000 feet up in the air and just be there, and nobody hassled you, and you just were as close to the sky as you could ever be. And oh my God, it's just beyond belief. Tatanka, you want to say?
Ron or Margo, have you heard? I heard from friends, and they have a friend who wrote, and I can get this to you, Harvey, that when all the power went out and it was just a beautiful windless day, and the fire started up in the hills, and then the 65-mile-an-hour wind, and it was just along with a lot of other information, and along with the fact that 2 big condos had gone up, they're really suspicious that this was perhaps geoengineered for the real estate industry. So anyway, just want to see if you've heard about that.
It's going around, and
We don't repost it.
Yeah.
Everybody on Maui is onto it. They're posting memes like, you're going to be asked to sell your property right away. Don't do it to anyone that doesn't live here, and preferably name it. And
Good.
But we don't know. We don't
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I've seen stuff like that too, and to me it's credible. But here we go. MYLA, I know you lived in Hawaii, and then Dorothy Reich.
Yes, I lived on the Kona coast for 9 years at a time when it was very rural and very wonderful in terms of community, a very diverse community of people who got together all the time and celebrated the first birthday of babies. We would have enormous family luau's with hundreds of people who would bring food and play music, and we used to gaze across the water at Maui. I did visit Maui, but I lived on the Big Island, and it's you know, just about a year ago I saw a drone footage of the Kona coast, and I didn't even recognize it because it was so rural when I was there, and I gotta tell you, I wept. It was just it was really heartbreaking to see how that once really fairly pristine area had become so overdeveloped, it seemed like to me. But anyway, this is really tragic.
Up until, and even now, even today, if you ask me if where of all the places on earth that I would want to live for the rest of my life, it would still be Maui. You know, there's just nowhere else like it, really.
No.
Dorothy?
Yeah, so I was in Maui many years ago. I had a woman who worked for me. She was actually young at the time, and she was going to the University of Hawaii and studying batteries, which she never, getting a PhD in chemistry. And she never put that to use because she was going to have to move to the Midwest in order to pursue that career. So she decided to stay in Maui, and she started working again for Countrywide. She worked in mortgage business, and she bought a house, and she had a child, and I've lost track of her, and I would love dearly to find her and see if she needs anything. Her name is Dawn, DAWN, BOUCHER. She seems, if you Google her, she's working as an esthetician. She's created some line of skincare or something. But so we were there for a weekend because I would have to go every Thanksgiving to see her because she was alone and I was her family, so to speak. So we'd go, mostly we were at the Big Island, but one year she wanted to go to Maui, and we did, and it was a really magical place. We stayed in a little guest house up in the hills, which is where she finally bought a house in the native section, not in the, inexpensive little house. And I don't know, where she is. The memory I have also is that being a typical tourist, I went to Lahaina with her, and there was a Mexican restaurant, and we had some food, and we started drinking raspberry margaritas. And every little raspberry margarita had a little mermaid hanging off the lip of it. And we had a pile of mermaids by the time we left. And I've had them for years. Finally, they little by little, they disappeared, but I had them around for a long time to remind me of Maui. And it was just a beautiful, wonderful place. And it was so devastating.
Thank you, Dorothy. It's beyond. Okay, Justin, and then I think we're going to have to go from Maui to Ohio, and Jeffrey real quick. But go ahead, Justin and Jeffrey, and then we'll move on. Justin, unmute.
Hello. So I visited Maui actually this year, ironically enough, and my specialty is in grid planning. And so it's ironic that there have been no mentions of lightning being a potential cause of fires all over the island and some on the Big Island, but definitely a lot of downed power poles. And the saddest part about all of this is Maui County Commissioner and Mayor have both said, yep, the power lines were still energized. They didn't have a public safety shutoff plan like they should have learned from California, and they didn't listen to us.
Yes, exactly. And if all those houses that had solar panels and there had been a microgrid, probably wouldn't have happened. Absolutely. Jeffrey, go ahead real quick, and then we'll move on.
Just real quick, if they wouldn't have cut down the breadfruit and planted sugar cane, and then decided that when the tax write-off went away, they just let the sugar cane go, and that's what provided all the fuel for the fires, all the dry grasses that grew up on the sugar.
They didn't care, and that could happen in the Everglades too. By the way, sooner or later, sugar is going to get driven out of the Everglades, and they're just going to walk away. And I guarantee you, it'll be a one of the biggest fires ever in the Everglades. It's a prediction you heard here first. Thank you for that. Jeffrey, go ahead, and then we'll move to Ohio.
I know I haven't been to Hawaii personally, but my mother has. Do you want to listen to her story?
Very quickly.
Okay, hold on. She's here. Let me get her real quick.
Okay. And we have
Mama?
with us, we have Rachel Coyle. Rachel, are you with us? We're going to talk about Ohio and
I'm here.
the victory there. It's always great after tragedy to celebrate a victory. We have two today to celebrate. Hey, Rachel, how are you? Okay,
Good.
Jeffrey's getting his mother. Rachel, let's have a whoop-de-doo here. We won a giant victory in Ohio, and tell us about it.
Yes. So really exciting. Ohio had an election this past week, August 8th. It was an illegal August election that Ohio had just banned them at the end of last year. They would have made it a lot harder, nearly impossible for citizens to put amendments on the ballot and pass constitutional amendments. So it would have made it nearly impossible for us to pass abortion rights, to end gerrymandering in our state. It really would have taken away a huge amount of power that Ohio citizens had. And we were able to defeat it with a significant majority. We had 57% of the state voted no on issue 1, even though we only had a couple months to campaign and let people know. So it was just incredible. So many more people turned out than they thought. We saw the issues that we saw on election day were polling places not expecting nearly as many people as showed up. So Logan County, which is a rural county in Ohio, had everyone in the county voting in one place because they expected so few people to show up that there ended up being lines down the block. And Stark County up in Northeast Ohio, they had several polling places literally run out of ballots because so many people came on this random Tuesday in the middle of the summer to vote down this issue. It was just incredible. So now I'm putting some articles in the chat for anyone who wants to see the breakdown by county and all the different people, Republicans, independents who voted against this power grab by the supermajority. So really exciting. We even had one county where the issue failed by one vote. Clark County, Ohio, one individual citizen flipped that over to the side of democracy. So it shows how important every single vote is. And it was really just a great day in Ohio.
Well, let's remind people what these jerks wanted to do. And I will tell you that there was an article afterwards with the Republican, he was head of the House and the Senate, saying they're not going to give up, that they're going to come back and try and do it. Tell us exactly, Rachel, what they wanted to do with this amendment.
Yes. So issue 1 would have done several things. One thing it would have done is made it so that if citizens wanted to put an amendment on the ballot to change the Constitution, they would have had to collect signatures, thousands more signatures from all 88 counties across the state, which is pretty much impossible to do if you're not a paid campaign. And so it would have made it so that only people who could afford to pay signature collectors in every county would have gotten on the ballot. And then once you got on the ballot, you would need 60% of the statewide vote to pass an amendment instead of the current simple majority, which is very convenient since all the polling shows that abortion rights are supported by about 59% of Ohioans. And even if 59% of Ohioans had showed up this November, we've got an election on November 7th, that would not have been enough if issue 1 had passed, which is just unbelievable. But like you said, we do have some politicians already saying that they're thinking of bringing this back up. Not this year. They've already missed that deadline. But Senate President Matt Huffman has already said that he's thinking of bringing this back sometime. He's also thinking that if on November 7th, Ohio passes abortion rights, they might try to find another way to go around the will of the voters. So we're always going to have to deal with that, but it is just huge. And I want to tell anyone who is in Ohio or knows anyone in Ohio, we have an election this November 7th, 2023, to vote on what is probably going to be both abortion rights and the right to adult use marijuana are probably both going to be on the ballot. So mark your calendar, tell everyone in Ohio, to mark their calendar for November 7th. You can already request your absentee ballot right now because we're less than 90 days away, which is wild. So all happening very fast. And the only reason we have a shot is because we won last week.
This is the guy. He says, well, Kasich, when John Kasich was governor, they tried to pass a right to work anti-union referendum, and it got crushed. And John Kasich, who I've met a few times, came out and said, well, okay, the people have spoken, and we're not going to bring this up again. But this current batch of Republicans, who must have been born in a nuclear power plant somewhere, and they're saying they're going to go at it again and again and again until they think they can do it. And you got to remember that the people of Ohio passed two statewide referenda against gerrymandering, and then the Ohio Supreme Court banned gerrymandering, and the Republicans in the legislature ignored all of that. And the state is still terribly gerrymandered. So these people just don't care. But we won. It's a magnificent victory. And Rachel, I'm sure it's all due to you. So thank you very much. Okay, MYLA, and then Eric, and then Paul.
But thank you.
I just have a quick question, Rachel. You said that they ran out of ballots at one polling place and something else. And I'm wondering if you know how they dealt with that.
Yes. So in Stark County, up in Northeast Ohio, there were a couple precincts that did run out of ballots, but everybody was encouraging folks to stay in line. The League of Women Voters and everyone was getting the message out as quickly as possible that if you stayed in line, the county board of elections would be bringing ballots to them. And so they would be allowed to vote, even if it was after that the polls closed. So we do believe most people were able to vote, but the league is asking that if anyone wasn't able to, that they reach out. And then in Logan County, they had prepared for so few people to show up. They literally were thinking that single digits of percentage of people would show up, that they had everyone in the county set to vote in one place. So there ended up being lines like down the block to vote. But we do believe that everyone who wanted to did end up being able to vote. They just had to wait a long time.
Well, some of the precincts, I think, used toilet paper, right? You could write on. No, this happened in 2004, where they deliberately ran out of ballots in places where they didn't really want people to vote. So there is historic precedent, an evil precedent in Ohio for running out of ballots, and we expect it to happen again. Eric Lazarus, and then Paul Newman, and then Justin again. Go ahead, Eric.
First, congratulations. Wow, what an amazing, awesome victory. You were already my hero, but now double. Question. This may happen again and again, where the opponents are completely over the top outrageous in what they're suggesting. And I'm wondering whether you've learned something you want to share with us about when the other side is willing to essentially bold-faced come out against democracy and American values, and has to where I think a lot of Republicans were viewing this as underhanded and sleazy and voted against it. So can you give us any general, what did you learn when the other side goes completely over the top? What?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that was very concerning during this election was they were running all these ads that we were worried were going to be effective, saying that they weren't talking at all about what issue one would actually do, but they were saying that if it doesn't pass, that's how all the indoctrinators would be able to, get trans kids surgeries without their parents' permission. They were making wild claims having nothing to do with the issue at hand, the democracy issue, saying that we had to protect our kids from, they were using transphobic language and hateful speech against anyone who supports abortion rights. And we were scared that those things would work in a world where people didn't know what issue one would actually do. But it turned out that the counter message of read the language for yourself, this is a democracy issue, don't let them take your rights away, that language worked, and people were not scared off by the transphobia and the attacks on abortion rights, which really shows that maybe that those are not winning issues, and that talking about democracy and freedom and abortion rights even are successful, and that you can get through all the crap if you say, like we literally said, and we're going to do this again with abortion rights, look at the language yourself. It's 1 page long. It's really easy to understand. Don't buy any of the crap you're seeing on TV. Read it yourself. And that it worked. And I'm hoping it works again in November.
Amazing. I think that the Republicans were saying that if you voted against issue 1, you would be abducted by space aliens.
They were making unbelievable claims that had no basis in reality, that the Constitution would be wide open to anyone who wanted to do any kind of grooming. They used all those trigger words and didn't work.
Yeah, well, thankfully, let's hope it's set a precedent. We've got 70 people with us, including Franklin Roosevelt, who's always over Paul Newman's shoulder there. And what are you eating, Paul?
I'm eating a Italian sandwich with unhealthy meats.
Oh, well, this is a vegan call. I'm afraid you're going to have to leave. So what do you got?
I just was curious. Now, to be clear, I was just curious, Rachel, the Ohio legislation can't legislate a law that requires those items that were on the ballot that everyone voted against, can they?
Right. They would have to put it back on the ballot for voters again if they want to amend the Constitution.
Wait, you got muted. Oh, you got muted. There you go.
But they can't do it any other way. They can't just legislate it.
Right. If they want to change, because in the Constitution right now, since 1912, Ohio voters put into our Constitution that we have this right to citizen ballot initiatives, and the process that we currently have is laid out in there. So if they wanted to change the Constitution, they would not have to collect signatures, which is nice for them, but they would then have to get voters to vote on it and pass it with a majority of the statewide vote.
And they did this in August, assuming that nobody would turn out.
Yes.
And that they would get a small turnout, which they would win. On the other hand, we did not get 60%. So, right. Ironically, anyway, Wendy and then Justin again. Wendy, thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Rachel. I had to chime in and just tell my sister, great job, great work, congratulations, and just back up everything you're saying, because here in Florida, like, unfortunately, we didn't do as well as you guys did. And I'm so proud of you guys. I'm so impressed, because I just know how tough it is to get over that propaganda. Here for us, it was like the utility monopolies that were behind when they did succeed in the 60% majority. Now they're going for 67%. But I just, from my personal experience and witnessing, I just know how tough of a job it is to get that done, and you guys succeeded. And like you said, I have so much hope for these galvanizing issues that are more progressive leaning, which shows the will of the people. And just congratulations, so much love, keep up the awesome work. Thank you.
Well, we're going to come to Wendy in a minute to talk about Florida with stuff I can't even believe. But Justin, go ahead, Justin LeBlanc. Thank you, Wendy.
So I attended some of the Netroots Nations sessions, and they confirmed what, Rachel, you were saying about messaging, that what appeals to voters, what actually succeeds, is values play, whether upholding those values or failing to uphold them. And so well done on the messaging. My question is actually, is it possible to get some of the independent redistricting back on the ballot for November to go with all of that groundswell you probably will have around abortion and marijuana?
So great question. And unfortunately, we can't get it on the ballot for November, but the day after issue 1 failed, a group came out and started collecting signatures to create a nonpartisan, citizen-led redistricting commission in Ohio. So that process, it would look very similar to what Michigan has had success with. And they are now collecting signatures that would end up on the ballot in 2024 if that gets on the ballot. It's funny because we only had a few months to collect signatures to get on the ballot for abortion rights, and they have until next year, which just feels like endless amounts of time. So it's very exciting that now we are looking at creating, it would be a 15-person citizen-led process, 5 Dems, 5 Republicans, and 5 nonpartisan independents. And the legislature would not have the final say in what our maps look like. So it really is possible that in 2024, because of our win in August, we could end up with that lack of the ending gerrymandering in Ohio.
Well, you have for that issue, one of the great advocates, and you really got to use them, and I know you're going to laugh, but it's Arnold Schwarzenegger. Because Schwarzenegger in California gave $3 million, as we reportedly, of his own money to back to, we had a referendum in 2008, and then in 2010, one for the assembly and then one for the congressional districts to establish nonpartisan redistricting commission in California, which works very well. It's one of the best in the country, and you should look at it. And
Yeah.
people, it's very popular and very successful. Of course, Arnold was a Republican, and the Republicans had a big interest in redistricting California because it was completely gerrymandered for the Democrats. But and Nancy Pelosi opposed this districting, this nonpartisan districting commission in California that was supported by Schwarzenegger.
Well, that's one of the things we're so excited about in Ohio is that former governors and AGs who are Republicans here are helping lead the redistricting effort. So that Arnold idea is really interesting. I wonder if we have any ties to him.
Well, you should see there's a 3-part Netflix documentary on Arnold, which is really great. I mean, I would love to meet Arnold, but his politics are he was very pro-solar. And, you know, he comes to Columbus every year for that weightlifting thing.
Yep, he does.
So I want you to get me a T-shirt that has the Arnold, a XX. And then when he comes there, you got to get to him.
All right, I'll see what I can do.
Arnold knows. And one of the reasons, this is so cool, this is why I love history, the law of unintended consequences. As most of you probably know, Arnold had an affair with his housekeeper, and she had a son called Joseph. And that when Arnold admitted that Joseph was his son to his wife, that ended their marriage. But Joseph actually grew up, and he went to the University of Michigan. And Arnold, because he was there, Arnold came into Michigan and helped them with their redistricting. Because for him, it's a big issue. So you got to see if he has any other illegitimate children that maybe went to Ohio State. That would be a big help. But nonetheless, so when Arnold comes for the weightlifting thing, you got to get him, and he'll support it. And you need to look. Everybody needs to look at the California Districting Commission because it's very successful. It went in 2008, 2010 for both the legislature and the congressional districts. So when you're doing this in Ohio, take a look. And then you can probably get to Arnold one way or another. There got to be people in Columbus that know him. Okay, Steve Caruso. Steve?
Yeah. I was going to say the Supreme Court, which is now fully dominated by the Republicans in Ohio, is still going to vote on an issue about abortion, a 6-week abortion ban, which is rescinded for the time being till they make a decision. And of course, then there's the redistricting issue, which maybe you mentioned earlier, that they're going to decide again too. So we got to keep going and keep pushing and get this thing straightened out, Ron.
Well,
Yes.
you know, the Republicans had a 4-3 majority. Is it 4-3 or 5-4? It's 4-3, I think. There's 7. So, but Maureen O'Connor, who was a Republican Chief Justice, voted in favor of fair districts. And then the Republicans told her to drop dead, but she is now off the Supreme Court. She's been replaced by a much more conservative Republican woman, Sharon Kennedy. And we'll see what happens. That'll be interesting. But thanks for that, Steve.
That is true, though. Ohio could potentially return to our 6-week abortion ban before the November vote. He was mentioning the Supreme Court. They could reinstate that ban. And that is, I mean, it would create a lot of interesting politics, but also would be just devastating for people in Ohio who right now have access to abortion through 22 weeks.
But they also nixed the challenge to the referendum in November. So that's great.
Yes.
Right.
They're not going to look at whether or not it's constitutional to have it.
Right. And on the marijuana issue, you know, I was in Ohio, in Columbus for decades. And every time we had a group that was trying to do a marijuana initiative, and everybody was too stoned to go get the signatures. So I hope you can avoid that problem in the fall.
Yes, the abortion or the marijuana folks they were about 700 signatures short and they turned in an extra 6,500. So unless their math is way off, they're going to get on the ballot. So that's very exciting.
Right. Well, they probably switched over to CBD just for the campaign. So that might have helped. Ron Leonard, do you have a hand?
Well, it's nice to know the marijuana group can count and that Arnold will be back. But Rachel, what I'm very interested in is not only the communication, but the method of communication. This is something that we can learn nationally and turn this whole situation around. How are we communicating in this particular issue? Was it mostly a media campaign? Was there a canvassing? What's the method that you can teach us about?
So unfortunately, the answer is all of the above. We got out early on TV, but we also were out early on all social media platforms. We had several different organizations, TikTok videos go viral with hundreds of thousands of views. We were paying for Google search ads. We were on not only broadcast television, but on Hulu and other streaming services with ads. So it was literally wherever you were. And then beyond that, we had a very significant, the unions got together with the party and did a canvassing campaign that was incredible. They knocked doors, they made phone calls to a very targeted list of Democrats who regularly vote in 2- and 4-year elections, but maybe would have no concept that there was an August 2023 election. They did all of the above and they got out early, which I'm being told is the key, that our message was there first and for a month or two before anyone else responded. But don't forget social media. It's very important. TikTok was huge for us this year.
But you've created a very important method. And the method really is not only all of the above, but the method is that, well, Donald Trump used this in his first campaign. He used canvassing. He used targeted canvassing. He used these little things called cell phones, which told the canvasser what he was going to say that would be helpful to that constituent. This is something that we can replicate. Congratulations.
You got to write this up, Rachel. You got to do an article about what you just said, because that's the template we need to have. And we'll get it to Andrea Miller and Ray McClendon, and we'll, this is very important. Ron raises a really good point here. Thank you. Bill Fenderson, we've never heard from you before. Bill Fenderson, go ahead. I'm unmuting you. Go ahead, Bill Fenderson. Maybe you don't exist. Hello? All right, well, I don't know where he is. Tatanka, go ahead.
Okay, I was just unmuted. Thank you so much, Rachel. I just want to say, I mentioned this one time before, but once you get this in place, it's really possible for people to work proactively to create the districts that you want to see. The Dolores Huerta Foundation in the Central Valley, which includes Bakersfield with GOP McCarthy's district, which is called the Selma of California, they proactively recreated, true to what they could see was going to come out, and immediately afterwards created a fair redistricting, presented it to the state up in Sacramento, were intimidated by the Proud Boys and other far-right groups. A lot of threats, just followed them around, a whole bunch of stuff, and they didn't know how it was going to turn out. And it turned out it was accepted unanimously, and it created a new Democratic congressional seat in the Valley. It made a big difference. So it's so good that you're doing that, because then citizen groups can proactively get involved and create the districts that they want.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, yes. Rachel, once again, Ohio finds itself in the, in a critical moment here. So we really got to make best use of it. I'd like you to come back in 2 weeks, folks. We're not going to meet next week, but 2 weeks, and let's revisit this and see how far we've come with it, because somehow or other, I mean, I grew up in Columbus. I always wondered what the hell I was doing there, but somehow or other, issues just come to Ohio. It's just like weird, but that's the way it is. So, meantime, I'll look up when the Arnold is, and I'm sure he'll be available for us. Thank you, Jeffrey. Very quickly, did you find your mother? to tell us her Maui story?
She didn't want to tell. In fact, I don't think she went to
Okay,
Maui,
okay.
but I do want to say something about all this. Two things, one to Rachel Coyle and one about the Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Very quickly.
And all right, Rachel, you planning to are you planning to do this out in other states like Florida? And as for Arnold Schwarzenegger, I made a comment about this. I said he's a Republican that other Republicans should be looking up to and being like, not people like Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis or although those kind of people.
Well,
Also-
Arnold Schwarzenegger is actually a very funny guy. I very strongly recommend the 3-part Netflix documentary on him. He is really interesting. I heard him speak in Columbus once, and he spoke with George Bush the first and Bruce Willis. And Bruce Willis was a total jerk. I mean, he's just a really offensive speech. But Arnold was very funny, very accommodating. And as governor, I mean, there were problems, but he was at least as pro environment as Gray Davis or what's the current guy, Gavin Newsom. So anyway, so actually, Rachel, what you should do is bring Arnold on the next Zoom call, and maybe he can give us some workout tips. I gotta say, Bobby Kennedy came to Columbus once. He spoke at the Hillel. We went out to dinner, and then he took me to his hotel, where, of course, they had kept the workout room open for him. And he showed me all this stuff that Arnold had showed him. So, because, Arnold was his brother-in-law for a while. Anyway, Bill Fenderson, we've got you. Let me unmute you here. Are you with us, Bill Fenderson? Yo. No, I can't get you unmuted. All right, we'll try again. Okay, we want to go. Rachel, thank you so much. Stay with us if you will, because the good news is going to be outweighed by Wendy in Florida. We have a situation which I believe is unprecedented in American history. I mean, it is astounding. Maya, I see your hand, but do you need to speak real quickly, or do you want to?
Oh, well,
Oh, wait,
were you
we
talking
got
about
Bill
me?
unmuted too.
I put it down, I thought, but I just wanted to say that Gray Davis was going to sue Enron. And the reason that he was recalled and Schwarzenegger was put in was to drop the suit against Enron to recover money. So anyway, but that was not good.
That was not cool that Arnold did that. Anybody who's interested in the Enron story, again, I'm going to recommend a Netflix documentary. It's called The Smartest Guys in the Room. And if you don't throw things in the middle of this documentary about how Enron really raped and pillaged California, you're missing that. So, and you're right about Arnold. He did sell out to Enron. That was his ticket into the governor's mansion. Bill Fenderson, do we have you unmuted?
Yep, I got you now. For some reason, I lost my internet.
All right, you go. Okay, we're good.
I have a
You
quick
get the
question.
prize, Bill. You get the prize for best mustache. So
Thank you.
congratulations. Okay, so what do we got?
Listen, I'm going to throw something out here for you all to understand. And when you think about everything that's been going on, 95% of our trouble started in 2016. Is that not correct?
Well,
you think about this. Now, I'm just putting this out here now. Every time we look at something that's going on, unfortunately, I've seen stuff happen. It should not have happened. They let them get away with murder. That shouldn't be going like that.
I agree. And
these people have a tendency to push back on so much stuff. It's not doing anything for the people.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that.
Yep.
And is that your wife in the background? What's she cooking?
Hey, tonight we're having tuna fish and noodles.
I'll be there. Just send me your.
Not a problem. But no, I just want to throw that out there for you. I mean, I don't know if that, but when you look at everything that's been going on with all the elections trying to be turned over and things of that magnitude, it gets to the problem. Everything goes crazy.
Exactly. Okay, thank you, Bill. Wendy Lederman, you're going to give us the bad news from Florida. I was about to say that in American history, I've never seen an instance, and maybe I'm missing something, where a governor removes elected officials. I mean, this happens in a fascist country, obviously, but Ron DeSantis has been firing people who were elected to public office. Is that correct?
Yes, the governor is on a rampage against democracy here in free Florida. He's on a crusade for sure. So most recently, after a rash of a few others, which I'll get into in a moment, just for some background, on this week on Wednesday, the 9th District's state attorney, Monique Worrell, who happens to be the state's only Black female state attorney, was suspended from office. DeSantis claims that she neglected duty and incompetence, and he cited cases that actually were sentenced by the judges, so they weren't even up to her discretion. She ran her progressive campaign, which she won by 67% of the vote in Osceola and Orange counties. She was backed by Bernie Sanders, and she ran on criminal justice reform, rehab and diversion, over incarceration, and as well as police accountability. And it's believed that a lot of these attacks came after she started prosecuting dirty cops, like Officer Jonathan Mills, who was charged with battery after he was doing cavity searches at traffic stops, unwarranted cavity searches, just randomly. She called him a terrorist. And there was another deputy who shot an unarmed Black kid, high school student, when he ran from his bike during a traffic stop. So she was the former director of the Criminal Justice Center at the University of Florida College of Law for 16 years. So she's quote saying, the policies that we implemented surrounding diversion are based on research. And from my research, Florida has an incarceration rate of 795 people per 100,000, giving us the highest rate in the country. So the Prison Policy Initiative says, quote, Florida locks up a higher percentage of its people than any other democracy on earth. And since she took office, the Inside Prison site says that in the 9th District, the overall crime rates in her district have steadily decreased in the last year or so. She was replaced by a Federalist Society judge, Andrew Bain, who in his first week already canceled her diversity programs and the diversion programs that provide alternative for nonviolent offenders. Also worth noting, her chief of staff was fired, who was on maternity leave. So this is a federal offense. And armed sheriffs showed up at her door while she's nursing to demand social media passwords. So about the voter suppression, as we discussed, because these are elected officials. So I'm going to quote Worrell real quick. When DeSantis makes the decision to suspend you because your politics don't align, he's effectively invalidating the votes of those who chose you to represent them as prosecutor. In another one of DeSantis's many forms of voter suppression in the state of Florida, in addition to gerrymandering court districts and the voting districts, as well as forcing regulations against the individuals who were formerly incarcerated and recently gained their rights to vote under Amendment 4, DeSantis then enacted election police who went around arresting people in his effort to scare people from voting. So in his rash of firing officials, this comes after last year's firing of Hillsborough County State Attorney Andrew Warren, after he made a public statement saying that he's not going to prosecute for basically abortion crimes under the 6-week ban. He wasn't going to make them a priority, and he was immediately suspended. And it goes on to school boards. There were 4 school board members in Broward County and a superintendent who were let go. There was the entire liberal arts college, the new school in Sarasota. Their president was fired, and 6 board members were replaced by DeSantis appointees. And then they went on to go ahead and fire 5 other professors. There were 5 students in Tampa who were protesting against the diversity policies that in effect fired more unionized professors, and they were charged with battery against an officer, but the video shows that the police were actually groping them and very aggressive towards them, and now they face felony charges and possibly a decade in prison. So this not only tips the scales towards the lock 'em up culture, but it's also opens the door for the extreme indoctrination through the education system. Right now, we just had approved PragerU, which is it's an unaccredited educational foundation that was started by a conservative pundit. And their materials, their educational materials, are going to be used in kindergartens, and they're making videos that are climate denying. They're cartoons that basically justify slavery, saying that it's culturally relative. And I'm just waiting for cartoons about how prison farms are happy camps or something. So to quote Worrell, justice does not prevail in the state at this time, and she will be seeking re-election. So I hope we can all support her. Thank you so much.
How can he legally do this? I mean,
Well,
what
he's-
have the courts said about a governor removing an elected official?
Well, he suspends them. So he's not firing them, and it's up to the legislature. And that's actually the context of that quote of justice does not prevail in the state of Florida at this time, because Worrell was talking about how we have a supermajority of Republicans in the legislature, and all the courts are being stacked with DeSantis appointees. So it's basically a coup. And so by suspending him, that's within his legal authority. But I mean, ethically, I mean, it makes no sense. So we're just trying to galvanize as many progressives as we can and take back the House and take back the state.
But the place is totally gerrymandered, obviously.
Yeah. The congressional districts, he changed the maps against the Supreme Court's approval. Now we have 20 we have 20 Republican districts and 8 Democratic districts. And they're trying to redistrict the courts as well and consolidate the courts. So basically, if you're in Key West, you'd have to travel to Miami, which is like 150 miles to get to your court date. And that's going to happen all around the country. And that's a Sixth Amendment thing where it suppresses your access to the court. And they're all going to be conservative judges, obviously. It's a dire situation. I really wish I had a better answer. Otherwise, that we need to just run on every level and take it back from the inside and raise awareness.
Boy, this guy is really scary, Ron DeSantis. He is. I don't think. I mean, we've had extreme right wingers, but this guy is very systematic. He went to Harvard and Yale, and we know he's gay, so he's got that kind of insight. And this guy is really terrifying. MYLA, you had a hand?
Yes, it sounds to me like as long as there's a supermajority of Republicans in the legislature, that the decision of DeSantis, all of a sudden I'm having trouble with his name, to suspend this popularly elected judge cannot be reversed any other way. The only remedy is to have her reelected, but what would stop him from suspending her again once she's elected again?
Well,
before you answer, just one other thing. I'm just wondering, is there no federal jurisdiction whatsoever? That's
for what?
Can't she appeal to the federal court to overturn the suspension?
Well, I know that her team of lawyers, I mean, I'm not sure if she's going to be bringing legal action. I'm assuming she's going to fight with every thing that she has, but there's no suit right now, which would need to come first before an appeal. So they're working on it. I mean, whatever angle they can take. I would say the future election, I mean, I'm not sure that DeSantis would be able to run for another term by the time she's reelected, because I think this would probably be his final, I'm guessing his final term here. But I do want to make the point that, and I've been going around with the abortion petitions for our abortion amendment, and I'm seeing, there is an extreme where I feel like a lot of the dregs, like has trickled down to Florida. Like we've kind of been like a magnet for the extremists, but a lot of people that voted for him and people that have conservative values he's really losing their support just because he's going so far. I mean, keep in mind, he's a total sociopath. We've said it here before. I mean, he was caught, or he's been accused multiple times of torturing prisoners at Gitmo. This is the type of mentality of a person we're dealing with. And so it's like slowly the robes are coming off. And his supporters are just less supportive of him now. So we do have to look out for his minions and the people that are coming up. But even his minions, I mean, it's kind of a temperature check for them to see how far they're actually going to be able to go. And progressives are definitely pushing back. So there is a ray of hope, I believe. But these are scary times, and hopefully this just sets the example for everyone else of for America to not become Florida, and let's bring Florida back to the home state that I know and love. And that's what we're working on.
Well, Florida is the place right now where democracy and freedom go to die, right? I mean, that's where it's really at. We have 72 people with us now. I want to say goodbye to my Progressive Radio Network listeners. The first hour is over, but we are going to continue. If you want to switch over and hear the sequel, the second hour of our Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Zoom call, go to www.grassrootsep for election protection.org. www.grassrootsep for election protection.org. And we will continue for another hour. But in the meantime, thank you, guys at PRN for running the show. And thank you, everybody there for listening. We're told we have between 500 and 1,000 people who listen on PRN, so that's good to know that we're joined by all of you. Mike Hirsch, you've got a hand. What do you got, Mike? Let me unmute you here.
Thank you so much. Yeah. First of all, welcome to my good friend Russell Green, just in time to give us another amazing presentation. And I'm going to drop into the chat the link to the PDA Zoom, which is going to help Russell organize marches all around the country to do something about the climate before the climate does unto us. So thank you. Welcome, Russell.
Thank you, Mike, for that. And of course, the climate, I hope all the people on Maui get together and sue the oil and gas companies and the nuclear companies for doing to the causing that fire, which we know they did. And Mike, I'm sure your Zoom tomorrow will be spectacular. Who do you have on tomorrow on your Zoom call, Mike Hirsch?
We'll have a bunch of the people who are organizing this. Mike Fox is no stranger to this Zoom, a constant organizer who's going to be working on getting people in as many communities as possible to organize as close to home as they can if they can't get to New York for the massive march. And there is a little confusion in the link that I'm putting in. The date is for the Zoom tomorrow. The march in New York is next month, so I apologize for any confusion.
Well, let's segue over. We're joined by the great Russell Green and also by Peter Fiorkowski, who's going to talk to us about the climate. Russell, you are a major organizer of this event upcoming in New York. Do you want to tell us a bit about it? We'll go to Peter and then come back to you. Russell, there you go.
Sluggo, good to see your beautiful face. Hello, everybody. Thank you
I like my new teeth. Pretty good, huh? Okay. Go ahead.
Well, Wendy, thank you for the invitation. And the presentation that I'll give is really brief, and we'll get to the point. I'll give it after Peter. But the short version is that Secretary General Guterres, in advance of the Conference of Parties, the 28th Conference of Parties in November, December, in the United Arab Emirates, is trying to really push the leaders of the countries that will be attending to commit to phasing out fossil fuel in advance of that. And he's holding a summit to that effect at the UN on the 20th and 21st of September. And the climate movement sees that as a really important opportunity to show up and show strength of support for President Biden, not only to do that, but to go further and declare a climate emergency using the powers that are his to use. So I'm going to take you through that after Peter.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. And I do hope when you're dealing with the UN that you will urge them to establish a demilitarized zone at Zaporizhzhia and the nuclear plants in Ukraine and take over operations there, because anybody who knows anything about nuclear power is absolutely terrified about those 6 reactors and 6 fuel pools in Ukraine that are currently under Russian control. This is completely beyond whatever side you want to support in the Ukraine war. Zaporizhia it could be 6 or 12 times worse than Chernobyl, and we need the UN to go in there and take it over. So something to think about.